Police brutality is defined as the use of excessive and/or unnecessary force by police when dealing with civilians. While little dispute that police brutality is an issue, many disagree that this abuse is racially motivated and discriminatory towards ethnic and social minorities. It seems as though every time you turn on the news, a new story pops up with the striking headline, Police Brutality. But why is it so publicized across media platforms? Why does anyone care? This is one of the forefront issues that has plagued society in the past and is progressively intensifying as little to no action is being taken. Police are expected to conduct their job in a safe and impartial manner, yet today it has come into question whether or not they are maintaining those standards of action. Recent movements have exposed the horrific truths about the treatment of minorities at the hands of our men and women in blue. This has exposed police brutality to the public eye, gaining support and inspiring others to be part of the change as well. Police brutality often disguises itself in various forms, including the use and abuse of weapons, false arrests, verbal and sexual abuse, intimidation, and racial profiling. Although many believe that police brutality is a consequence of enforcing the law and maintaining peace, in reality, it stems from discrimination towards minority groups through racism and targeting, magnified by the lack of accountability towards officers. Police brutality began as a relatively new concept to the world, yet in this day and age, it seems as though everywhere you turn, there are new cases being reported. Throughout history, African Americans have undergone discrimination on the basis of race, from slavery to segregation to police brutality. During the Civil Rights Movement, police officers fought off peaceful protesters with high-power water hoses and used police dogs to attack them. They did this in attempts to immobilize these groups and prevent African Americans from obtaining equal rights. In a similar fashion, in 1969, Stonewall riots and violent police attacks against gay and transgender people took place in New York City. 9 police officers raided a popular gay bar that served as a safe haven from the common discrimination the LGBTQ+ community faced at the time. As the officers attempted to roughly escort patrons and bartenders, they became fed up with the mistreatment, resisting, and a riot unfolded. Then and now, police continue to harass citizens of different ethnic backgrounds and sexualities, yet others still turn a blind eye to their suffering. A lesser-known instance of police brutality occurred post 9/11, where police would racially profile Muslims and even infiltrate mosques in attempts to uncover hidden terrorists. These attacks were humiliating and invading, and showcases the fact that certain law enforcement have little respect for minorities or religions. Police brutality is not a coincidental targeting towards seemingly dangerous people. It is a discriminatory attack that is belittling and unjust to all affected communities.
But that's because I'm in a uniform, right? I still have the realities of not in a uniform, where I get pulled over. I've been asked, do I actually own my car? Did I steal my car? When I engage in conversation and I show my police credentials, I show my badge, the tenor changes quite drastically.
The main and predominant factor that influences police brutality is race, yet many refuse to believe this. So why is it that Black people are 3 times more likely to be shot than a white person? This statistic is rooted from the inherent racism present in our society and country. And to the deniers and non-believers out there, why is it that police killed 1,147 people in 2017, and Black people were 25% of those killed despite being only 13% of the population? Researchers of the Boston University School of Public Health in 2018 illustrated a positive correlation between structural racism and fatal police shootings of unarmed Blacks. Every day, law enforcement exhibit unjust and biased behaviors, abuse their power, and target people of color and humiliate them. Racial profiling prevents law enforcement from doing their job, as over time they lose credibility and trust among the people they are sworn to protect and serve. 13 of the 100 largest U.S. city police departments kill Black men at higher rates than the U.S. murder rate. Native Americans, African Americans, and Latinos are the 3 groups most likely to be killed by police. The aforementioned people of color are all targeted or feared for baseless and unjustified reasons other than the fact that police officers let racist and biased stereotypes control their thoughts and actions. The fact that police brutality occurs so frequently yet often goes unreported is alarming by itself, but the truly disturbing thing to note is that when reported, little is done. Police officers take a brief paid leave of absence and merely return to work unaffected, while the victims are often not so lucky. On March 3, 1991, a police chase in Los Angeles resulted in the beating of a young black man, Rodney King. A video of the incident showcased him lying on the ground while several officers assaulted him. 4 LAPD members were charged, but despite the evidence, a predominantly white jury acquitted the officers. Justice was not served for Rodney, an innocent and defenseless black man, or his family. In 2015, 99% of cases had not resulted in any officers involved being convicted of a crime. Because of the lack of accountability law enforcement face, they are able to get away with their abuse of power. Millions of dollars are spent to treat police misconduct rather than taking preventative measures against future occurrences. Police abuse ends when accountability begins. Many argue that police brutality is inevitable due to the reality of the dangerous circumstances and individuals police deal with. Some aspects of this argument is true. Police are put in constant danger. They risk their lives to keep communities and citizens safe, which forces them to make split-second decisions. How else should one respond? Sometimes force is the only viable response.
And so we actually used the data that we collected to interrogate that narrative, to see if it was the truth. And what we found was that actually there's not a connection between violent crime rates in US cities and the rates of police violence in those same cities. There are cities with high levels of violent crime, like Newark and Detroit, that have comparatively low levels of police violence. And there are cities with lower levels of violent crime, like Orlando, Florida, that have much higher levels of police violence. So something else was explaining why police violence was happening in particular places. Just to bring this point home, compare Buffalo, New York with Orlando, Florida. Between 2013 and 2016, both of those cities had similar populations, similar crime rates, similar demographics. But police in Orlando, Florida killed 15 people over that time period, and in Buffalo, New York, 0 people were killed by police.
A study from the Boston University School of Public Health led by Michael Siegel, a community health sciences professor, found that structural racism was still a significant positive predictor of police shootings of unarmed black suspects. This confirms that police are biased and excessively violent towards certain minority groups rather than them simply being precautious. Many are familiar with the violent death of Stephon Clark, an unarmed black man who was fatally shot 20 times by officers who suspected him of having a weapon. The circumstances surrounding his death were never confirmed due to the shifting accounts from the officers involved. They claimed he had a gun, a crowbar, and then a toolbar. His brother voices a question that many of us were thinking: what is a toolbar? These facts and anecdotes reinforce the argument here. Police brutality is not a justified result of law enforcement making decisions to keep others safe. It targets people of color out of officers' own racial prejudices and biases, and these acts of violence should no longer be tolerated or ignored. Now we have come to the end, so let's face the most obvious question: what can I do? Many people feel removed from or safe from the impacts of police brutality, yet that's not quite the case. Society must relearn how to treat people, how to be fair and just, and how although our law enforcers in many ways are serving us, they are also failing us. Although awareness on this issue is improving, indisputable evidence of such events becomes deemed as circumstantial and inconclusive. Our society lacks accountability, and every single day we let guilty officers walk away from the violence they have instilled. Yet it doesn't have to be this way anymore. Change can begin when we
help us understand who you are as police officers so we can help you do your job and we don't feel like you hunting us. Because that's what it feels like sometimes, and I hate that feeling.
Regulations, such as civilian review boards, restrictions on discharging a weapon, required written reports on use of physical violence, mandatory training with focal points on violence reduction and defensive techniques, and most importantly, holding officers accountable in instances of reported police brutality. These are all necessary steps in fighting this issue. One person can exponentially invoke change in how our world treats people of color, which is the purpose of movements and campaigns such as Black Lives Matter. To amend the damage we have done to society, we need to act today and not later. Don't be the person to ignore the issues of the real world. Be the person to invoke change. Be the person to help resolve police brutality.
The deeply entrenched racisms that exist in our country have to be addressed. And they have to be addressed not for the sake of any singular minority population, but really for the sake of all of us just as human beings. I really believe that things can change.